Hello and welcome to our final race event broadcast. You're here with us at the TSN Armada online. We've just got the two ships doing their practice laps around the course at the moment, near to the Atlantis Gate. Is this the Cronus system that we're in? No, it's not Cronus. I tell you what, let me look up that system. I think they're aiming to make a start on the actual race around 25 minutes past the hour, so it's 19 minutes past the hour, so we've got about 6 minutes of practice lap time. I'm sure we can get a word in from our sponsors.
Well, probably, but before that, thank you very much for the introduction there, Xavier. Once again, my name is Christian Barr, here to help commentate on the final racing spectacle of our event.
Okay, just one moment there, just one moment. And just to finish off my introduction, joining me here in the commentators box is Kristen Barr. He'll be helping me commentate. We also have somebody who managed to get VIP front row tickets. Greybeard is joining us as well. We've gagged him so he doesn't interrupt the awesome commentary going on. So,
well, welcome, Greybeard. Yeah, so it
Remember,
looks.
Your local sports book is where you want to put down your money.
Well, yeah, it looks like we just have the two teams for this final race. But the good news is that it is two teams of juggernauts, two teams that we've seen competitors from throughout this weekend. So Team 1 we have in the Normandy, we have Agent DWIB and Angel of Rust. And in the Intrepid, we have Liberty for All and Roger Wilcon, two names I'm sure you will absolutely recognise from previous races. So they know how this kind of thing goes. They know about energy conservation. They know about the performance of the ships. So it'll be nice to see how experienced crews really handle this racing format.
And just to update you here, we are in Cerberus Sector 2, just by the Atlantis Gate. It's interesting how they've selected two different vessels. I wonder if the race controller is going to allow that to go ahead, or whether the race controller is going to insist on the same vessel, with the Scout having the slight edge, I think, over the light cruiser with its speed there.
Yeah, in terms of racing performance, a Scout is going to beat a standard Artemis class any day of the week. Artemis would definitely favour better in a fist fight, but with weapons not allowed, there's no point in that. So I imagine we'll see the Intrepid move to an Artemis class to match what we've seen the rest of the weekend.
Or maybe even get the Artemis class into a Scout cruiser, see what Scouts are like on one of these race courses, because so far we've just been seeing the light cruisers, haven't we, on these courses and how they perform.
That's very true. However, we are trying to fill an hour with this event, so if we put them in Scouts, that's not going to happen.
Well, you know,
we'll get like 6 races in.
The quicker they get around
an extra
those
5 laps.
Yeah, the quicker they get around that course, the more races we can get in through the time. And we were saying earlier, actually, looking at these races, this is a new race format that we've come up with for this TSN Armada Online event, and I think it's been quite successful. We weren't expecting it to be this competitive, particularly with the races, and being able to commentate them as well. I've quite enjoyed that. They seem to have we seem to have hit on a good format for a race here. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? It has been a delight commentating these, and I've even had the pleasure / misfortune, depending on which way you look at it, of participating. I was in the 3rd slot, which is why you didn't hear either mine or Xavier's dulcet tones for the last commentary. We had guest commentators in for that because Xavier was running the show and I was racing. Where I came is irrelevant. Probably shouldn't talk about that.
Which position did you come in on that one?
Hey, the silver medal is the silver medal. I'll take second. I'm a full-time commentator, part-time racer. I will take a silver medal. That's all right. Shout out to my helmsman Raiden for sterling work at the helm. I tell you what, Xavier, would you like to maybe have a quick chat with Fish and see what he's doing about these ships? And whilst you're doing that, I can chime in a word from our sponsors.
Well, interesting that you mentioned that. He's just been messaging me directly about the rules on classes, and I think the general rules that we've been issued with on the classes is they have to be of the same class. Exactly
Yeah.
what class that is, I don't think it's really going to matter as long as they're of the same class, so that everybody's got a level playing field. So you can just see the Intrepid there. I think it's just respawned as a light cruiser.
I thought you were going to respawn them both as juggernauts from that previous comment about juggernauts of Warrior.
That was just me being colourful with language. Although,
And I think if we respawn them as juggernauts, the energy stabilization and boost that they've got there is just not going to be enough.
that's how you screw an engineer's presets in about 30 seconds.
And there goes the family show.
That's it. What? I object to that comment. We'll discuss this later.
Indeed, we'll chalk that one down to experience. Okay. So it looks like they've just moved the Arden station to refuel, maybe restock. Well, I'm sure we'll be getting a note from the race controller shortly about starting this mission.
Excellent. Well, that leaves us just enough time for a quick message from our sponsors. Now, as you'll remember, our previous sponsors were Hjord Nail, but unfortunately, due to people being admitted to hospital for alcohol poisoning, we've had to distance ourselves from that.
Please proceed to the start line.
Excellent.
Oh,
So,
excellent.
our new sponsors are Arvonian Tech Support. The engineers over at Arvonian Tech Support Incorporated are the best in the business at making sure our organically impaired friends stay in tip-top shape. Whether you need a tune-up, a refit, or the technological equivalent of necromancy, Arvonian Tech Support can help. Arvonian Tech Support. Have you tried rebooting? We'll know if you lie to us.
Excellent. So we seem to have gone through quite a few sponsors during these race events.
Well, I couldn't think of anything else to say about Hjord Nail.
So some comments in the live chat here. Wolf Pup, silver medal is still first loser.
Well,
That's fighting talk there from a veteran racer, I think.
Congratulations on being the silver medal for Smack Talk.
And another comment from the
Stand by.
Wolf Pup as well. Dreadnought racers will be interesting to watch.
1.
Here goes the countdown.
And they're
a
off.
Very slow start off the line there.
I think having done this particular course before, the Intrepid is probably being very careful about energy conservation.
The Normandy taking that corner quite slowly. In fact, taking the whole course quite slowly. The Intrepid pulling out ahead early there.
Yeah, absolutely. I may have to eat my hat on the comments about energy conservation from the Intrepid. It seemed they were just waiting for that straight line to really pump it into the fifth gear, or rather into warp 4.
Moving now on to their fourth turn, Intrepid in the lead. Normandy just passing through the nebula. Intrepid taking a quick corner but going wide at the end. And there'll be, in fact, no, that's a perfect line for turn 5 down in Grid Echo 5 there. They have built up a really good lead on this one.
So much so that they can actually afford to take this next corner nice and easy and make sure they get lined up for that sixth buoy nice and well, they can choose to skirt round the asteroids at this point with this kind of lead, which will allow them to maintain that level of speed.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see the different team tactics, whether Intrepid, like it is doing, is going to try and blast straight through those asteroid fields, or whether they want the clear space to go around it. Let's see what the Normandy does on that. I mean, you could get a straight line up into Grid Bravo 5 and come round sharply after the asteroid field, which it looks like Normandy might just be doing, or is it aiming for that gap in the field, very nicely threaded through by the helms officer there.
Absolutely. And a really sloppy turn on the sixth buoy from Intrepid there means that their lead is actually diminishing slightly. Unfortunately, Normandy can't capitalise on it. They really take possibly a bit too much caution getting around that corner, and Intrepid manages to pull out in front again. Intrepid has to be a little bit careful here, but it looks like they've just passed on the right side of that buoy and will be able to continue without any penalty.
They're now on to their second lap. The Normandy still lagging behind on this race. I think they're trying to push it too fast, too hard to try and catch up, and they're overshooting those turns. We've seen in previous races the best way to approach these is really tight, controlled turns. You can see the Intrepid there going around turn number 3 at the top. They're taking it really nice and tight and controlled, and that's going to keep their lead, I think.
Absolutely. And Normandy, they look like they're trying to follow suit, but the problem here is a tight turn is no good if you come to a full stop. A full stop, the acceleration rate of these ships isn't bad, but it's not the best. And if you're having to constantly go from 0 to warp 4, build up is too slow.
Yeah, the Normandy there getting stuck inside that nebula slowed them right down. They had a nice run of speed. It could really, if you took that turn 3 a little bit wider and came around outside the nebula, you could probably get a good warp 3, warp 4 run straight down onto point 4 and make up a lot of distance between the two ships.
Oh, absolutely.
The Intrepid now moving again through the asteroid field, taking a line straight through the asteroid field up to turn 6.
And taking a tad
on
bit of
the
damage.
port side. The Intrepid taking some damage there, evidently using the tactic of bounce off every asteroid to get you through as quickly as possible.
Another really wide turn on that. But again, it doesn't seem like the Normandy is going to be able to capitalise on that. They're quite a ways behind, and I think it will really come down to how they take this turn in response.
The Normandy taking a couple of hits on their hull as well as they pass through the asteroid fields. Let's see if they can get that turn around. If they can stay outside that nebula, they may be able to make up some speed.
They did get past that nebula okay, but again, it is that almost complete full stop which is really holding them back.
Okay, I'm gonna just adjust the background music here on some a little bit of background music on. So if it is too loud and you are watching, give me a shout and we will tweak those sound levels.
Intrepid.
Go on.
Sorry, after you.
I'm just saying, Intrepid taking a line through the nebula, losing a lot of speed, a lot of time, giving the chance for the Normandy to start making up a little bit of room.
Yeah, the Intrepid, I think they were a bit too confident in the amount of the lead they had, and now they've virtually lost it.
See, if the Normandy here can swing around that point 3 and take a wide angle round, they could possibly get a lot of speed up and close the distance.
Fortunately, it looks like that slow crawl through the nebula again has put them right behind. It's really unfortunate because this is a very cat and mouse race where the Intrepid pulls out with a strong lead, does something not the best tactic, and then the Normandy pulls right up on them. But then the Normandy has a real bad habit of repeating the mistakes that the Intrepid are making and then just gets sent right back.
Yeah, I mean, just then, that line through the nebula there, the Normandy took straight through the nebula. In fact, went through more nebula than they needed, and that's very, very costly in my opinion. You should, if you ask me, getting outside those nebulas and not passing through them. Like the Intrepid now is going to go through nebula. If they'd have taken that corner a little bit tighter, they wouldn't have slowed down to where they are now. I mean, turn number 5, you are going to have to go through the nebula to get round it. But turn number 6, turn number 3, after turn number 3, you could avoid that nebula and really get the speed going.
But do you see how quickly the Normandy ploughed through the nebula on buoy 5 there? And in fact, they gave it too much juice and took a wider corner than they needed to. But it shows that you can punch through nebula effectively, and yet every other time they've attempted it, it's a slow crawl and they get stuck in it.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think if I was helm on the Normandy, I would from 0.5 to 0.6, I would have aimed more for the Atlantis gate to get a tighter turn around 0.6 and come in between 0.6 and the nebula itself. That way you're not going to lose all that speed. You can probably keep warp 1 up if it's wide enough around 0.6 and then accelerate to warp 2 down to turn 7 and keep that speed up all the way through. And that's going to be the key thing. You need to try and keep the speed up all the way through the channel, through the turns. Blurry, I'm just going to move you into the race lobby, if that's alright.
And it looks like Intrepid has made a quick pit stop, unless that's the race. No, it looks like the Intrepid has had to stop for a pit stop. This is a big change for the Normandy. Normandy now pulling out ahead.
Or is
Oh no,
that the race?
came to a full stop.
That might be the race.
Wow.
So the Intrepid, clear leader throughout there. Normandy, I think, making too many mistakes with their turns and hitting too many of those nebulas that really bogged them down.
That's a crying shame. I got really excited then, because wouldn't that have been a turn up for the Bucks? A sudden Normandy just blasting right through.
What we'll have to do is speak to the race controller next time, see exactly how many laps they're doing, so that we can.
I think he told us. I think we forgot again.
Alright, excellent. So they are just reinitializing. I think they're going to go into another practice lap. Let's have a look at the course. And I wonder if Normandy can learn from their mistakes there and make up a little bit more speed. Maybe they're going to use that experience from the last race to really be competitive in the next one.
And I mean, it's you know, we've got some real veterans of the weekend here. So I'd really like to see some more effective turns. I'd like to see evidence that they've identified the issues within that last race and gone, okay, here's what we need to do to address it. Obviously, they've got a couple times around now, just as a form of practice lap, so they can, because this track hasn't come up a lot. In fact, I don't think have we seen this one this weekend?
It's no, I don't think we have. I think this is one of the easier tracks. Oh, we have, because it's got the pits in there as well. It's quite a short but fast track.
This is the eight track.
Yeah.
It's
the
one
8 lap.
starboard and one port.
So yeah, this is an 8 lap track. They're just starting their test laps now. This is again a lot of important cornering, a lot of nebula to navigate. The asteroid field, there's only one of them. It's not as dense, so less to worry about there. Their main problems are going to be effective turning and powering through those nebulas, or avoiding them altogether. I
mean,
wherever possible.
That turn 5 is going to really slow them down. I think that turn 5 is going to be where we see the engineers come into the run. If the engineers boost their warp systems inside that nebula and shift them round really quickly and through that nebula, I think they'll be able to pull out a lead. Our race controller joining us just here. Fish, how's things going on your end?
Things are going well. They're just doing some practice laps. It'll be 3 or 4 minutes before we let them line up for the final go. This will be a 4-lap race. They've got a slightly less intense energy boost to their systems than they did last time around, so I think energy levels are going to be quite critical this one. I'll let you know when we're about to get going.
All right, thank you very much. So
Thank you, race controller.
looking at a 4-lap race here. There's going to be very fast laps, I think, on this one.
Normandy's going to have to make a very sharp turn here, and they hitting the gate.
Yeah, there's
But it cost them a lot of distance. I don't know if they can make it up. It looks like Intrepid has got quite a lead.
the good news is this is still practice laps. So this is them they're just feeling out the track at the moment.
Pretty good.
So
What'll be interesting
We're
is
jumping right into it.
no, what'll be interesting is if during these practice laps they're really thinking about how to approach that turn 5. I think that's going to be really vital, especially that turn 3 as well is going to be quite important, because if they go too deep into that nebula, potentially they're going to hit a lot of nebula coming out of grid E4 and up into D4. But if they can get out of that nebula quickly in grid E3, then they'll have a good run up through to turn 4 and then through to turn 5. I think the real key is going to be limiting the amount of time inside those nebulas.
I think you can't underestimate the importance of turn 4 here. Turn 4 forces them to approach turn 5 from, what's that going to be? Charlie 4, Mark, would you say 7?
Yeah, so I'll just indicate on the screen here. So they're going to be moving starboard side of that turn, so they're going to have to keep turn 4 on the right hand side, and it's going to bring them in at a much sharper angle, isn't it, in that little bit of a dip in the nebula where the Intrepid's just gone, and it's whether they can get around that turn 5 sharp enough. It's going to be important to get that sharp turn,
because otherwise, I mean, you could pull a straight line from E3 up into C5 and take a harder turn round, so you can build up a nice bit of speed in Bravo 5 and then just push right through. That fourth buoy is integral in making sure that they have to really think about what they're doing with that nebula.
So the Normandy, for example, they're taking a much wider turn on number 4, trying to get through the smaller part of the nebula on that practice lap to see if that works, and then if they can whip back round and get their engineering systems powered up, they might just be able to whip round really sharply, take a really short line through the nebula back after turn 5 and straight into turn 6. If they can just get that steering just right, so they might be able to get an advantage there.
It doesn't seem to have worked for them there, which is the crying shame, but I'm really heartened by the fact they're clearly trying different techniques. That means they're feeling this track out, and they're really looking for the best ways and the most efficient ways to get around.
Most definitely.
Well, I think this is probably going to be their last test lap. Did Fish say what time they were kicking off?
I'm not sure. Usually it's about 5 or 10 minutes. In fact, this might be communications coming through. No, a little bit premature there.
There we go. Well, I mean, if that was a real lap, that would be a crying shame, because the Normandy would have completely missed the gate there and would currently be doing a penalty. There we are.
Yeah.
Looks
and
like
that's something interesting, actually. That last race, we didn't see a single penalty have to be issued. The crew's doing really well, actually, to complete every single lap without any mistakes. So
absolutely.
Other than the lines that were taking, I'd say they were getting past the turns exactly how they should be getting past them.
That absolutely was a testament to the fact that these are two crews with experienced crew members, that they know the penalties are far worse than just taking your time. Like, I know I was going on a bit about the fact that they really slowed down for those corners, but a missed buoy penalty is far worse.
Wolf in the chat agreeing that turn 5 is a really rough turn on this course, because that setup is really hard to work around. So yeah, we agree with you there, Wolf. That there's so many different approaches to that.
Warships report to the start line.
Ooh.
Nice little chime there for the race.
Yeah, our race controller getting fancy.
But like I say, on that turn 5, there could be a few different approaches. I mean, one approach that I've seen, I think, in one of the earlier races was going past turn 5 and taking it really wide and going outside of the nebula altogether, up into the alpha grids and then down for turn 6. Could be a potential one to be able to keep up the speed, but it's whether the teams want to try and risk that, because I'd say that is a high-risk strategy, and if I remember, it didn't quite pay off, at least in some of the test laps we've done, whether it was a live race that we broadcast or not.
Certainly. And as the pilots approach the start line for this race, just a quick word from our sponsors. Arvonian Tech Support. Your negligence of the supreme understanders children is heresy and has been logged for review.
Yeah, Arvonians, they're really caring about their technology.
On your marks. 3, 2, 1, go.
Alright, and here they are off. accelerating up to warp. Intrepid pulling out in front straight away. Are they going to be able to make this turn nice and tight though? Normandy trying to catch up, I think, and overshooting the turn. It could cost them going through that nebula.
I mean, that wasn't the tightest line for Intrepid, but they managed to keep their speed up throughout that. Normandy following suit, possibly putting them on the back foot there. Intrepid taking nice, tidy lines around the fourth buoy. Normandy, again, trying that wide line to punch through a thinner part of the nebula. Works out for them. Oh, that is much cleaner than I expected.
Interesting. They've made up a lot of distance to catch up the Intrepid there. They really need the engineer there to feed all the energy into warp systems, get back up to speed and out that nebula as quickly as possible.
That was going really, really well for them until the back end of that turn. They closed a massive gap, and unfortunately, it was just that crawl through that last bit of nebula. If they can tie that down, they should make it through the gate.
Quite a nice line on the gate. If they'd have just got that turn around there, they could have got a perfect line onto turn 2. Bringing it round quite wide. Normandy still. Intrepid taking a really good line past turn 3 and up to turn 4 now. This is lap 2 that we're watching of 4. Intrepid are leading.
You know what? You hate to see it. Two schools of thought here. We know that for fuel efficiency, the best way to do it is those sharp, tight turns. This is a 4-lap race. Half the laps that we would normally do on this track. So fuel efficiency is a lesser concern. Now there's 2 ways that you can take these buoys. You can either go for a nice wide line, so you can pump more power into a warp and worry a little less about manoeuvring and really give yourself the speed, or you can do slow and tight just to get the angles right. Looks like Normandy picks up a penalty there.
Yeah, they approached that turn 5 just on the wrong side. I think that's going to be a decider of the race there, and unless Intrepid does something really drastically wrong here, as long as Intrepid can keep it together, I think Normandy are out of this race.
And that's a crying shame, because as I was saying, that there were 2 ways that you can take that corner, and on the second buoy, Normandy failed to do either. They did a combination of the 2, which was to take it wide and slow right down, and it really didn't go well for them. There's enough room there that you can take that corner quite wide, maintain enough speed, and still punch up at the right angle to pass by 3 and then come round to 4.
Normandy there missing out turn 3, picking up another penalty.
Oh,
I think they've just lost their focus far too much, sadly.
a crying shame. They're a good crew, but that's all she wrote.
Intrepid coming round. I think Intrepid are now entering their final lap. Going down. As long as Intrepid keep it together, the race is theirs, definitely.
Intrepid is actually trying to lap the Normandy at the...
It looks like they might just do that.
And that would be a historic moment for the TSN Armada weekend. The first time it's happened all weekend.
Wow, really nice line from the Intrepid though there. Really nice line. From turn 2 into turn 3, they cut that so fine. They got that perfect. Absolutely. Perfect.
And I think really at this point, it's really a point of pride for the Normandy. If they could have been taking that corner like that this whole time, and getting a little bit more speed coming out of that nebula, this would be a completely different race.
Yeah, I must say,
Intrepid is nipping right at their heels, though.
This last lap by Intrepid, really, really clean lap. Very impressive. Their helm skills there, really, really good.
Normandy too wide on this last one. It looks like,
and
at the very last. At the very last, you couldn't have called it any closer. A crying shame for the Normandy there, but a sterling effort all round, and what a way to conclude that race. Well, I don't know if the race controller has any plans for a third race. I'm fairly sure we've got the time, and it would be a real nice opportunity to give the Normandy a chance to really perform.
Honor,
yeah, absolutely.
No, I think the killer for Normandy there was the penalties on the corners, and when they went from second turn into fourth turn and missed out that third, that just sealed the deal for Intrepid, I think.
Really. Well, guest VIP Greybeard. What did you think of that race?
As he was saying, it was going well until they hit that penalty, and then after that, it was just a case of trying too hard to make a comeback. Sometimes you got to go with the flow, you know.
All right, so just working with the race controller there, talking to him on the text channels. He asked if there was going to be a third race. He said our final event of the Armada, the Game Master mission that we're going to be running, there doesn't seem to be too many people waiting. He's going to speak to the two teams, see if they fancy doing a third race, and we may overrun a little bit into the Game Master mission, but we'll switch on to that once we've finished this race. It would be good to see one last race, I think.
Absolutely. Like I say, I have seen the crew of the Normandy perform, I'd like to say better than this over the course of the weekend, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on, but I'd really like to see them pull out the big guns final race if we get one.
Speculating that perhaps fatigue may be setting in?
I can confirm that for all of us, fatigue is indeed setting in.
Well, it is part of that good con feeling to be tired come Sunday evening.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. All right, let's see what call the teams make with the race controller there. Hopefully we've got another race to go. If not, we'll be moving on to the Game Master missions. We'll see.
Well, I mean, we could also do post-race interviews. We haven't been able to do that all weekend.
That's true.
I hate dead air. I can't stand it.
It's all right.
Fish has swum down to have a talk with the team.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of music on in the background, so while we're not talking, the viewers can enjoy the tunes that are just playing out there. They're fairly quiet, so we can still talk over the top of them. It looks like the race controller's rejoined us. Hello, race controller.
Hello. I've had a word with the teams, and they're up for another race. So we're going to go over to the Euphony Expanse for the grand finale, I think.
Fantastic.
Absolutely fantastic. Okay.
Minefields there?
Very interesting comment on one of our previous videos, the Game Mastered mission. Somebody asking, wanna be friends? The answer to that, if you're watching this, is no. It's a bit odd to get random people just asking to want to be friends on one of the comments on your videos that you put out, but
I mean,
I do appreciate the comment. It means that somebody must have been looking in and viewing it. I hope you enjoyed the stream. Yeah, it's a little bit of an odd request. I don't know how you go about being friends on a YouTube broadcast. However, I will request that if you want to see more content like this, do subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then what we'll do is, if we're doing more missions in the future and I have the opportunity, I'll try and stream some more things.
Absolutely. Also, very bold of you to assume that they were talking to you. Maybe they wanted to be my friend.
Whoa, just a minute.
Oh no, wait, I wasn't in that. That was you. Damn.
That was all me. That was me and Fish. That was me and Fish.
Oh well, there you go, Captain Ego. They could have wanted to be fish friend.
Friends
Can't
with
word.
the fish.
Yeah.
The fisherman's friend.
The fisherman's friend. Wow.
Maybe they'd have had better luck had they proposed an alliance instead of a friendship.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
he won't be your friend, but he will be your commanding officer. Join the TSN today.
Excellent, yeah.
We haven't really plugged the TSN this weekend. I mean, it's not about the TSN this weekend, but
Well, I think we put up the bonus stream for people to watch. That was one of our missions where you could actually see the TSN crew in action. So But
Yeah,
yeah,
because you,
it's been very much about holding this event for the Artemis community, having them come along, because we know that the actual Artemis convention that happens every year had to be cancelled sadly this year. So we thought what we'd do as a group with experience in hosting events online and doing it week in week out, we'd put together a special program so that people could join us. And to be honest with you, it's been a really great turnout. I've enjoyed seeing people. I've enjoyed seeing some new names. I would say new faces, but I can't see everybody, so it's just voices. New names, hearing some new voices, people who aren't part of our group joining us and taking part in the events. And I hope they've enjoyed what we've managed to put on for them.
yeah, it's been a fantastic weekend thus far. Although admittedly we are coming to the tail end of it, but yeah, it's a crying shame the Armada couldn't happen. And obviously, whilst this is no substitute, it has been nice getting to hang out with some non-TSN Artemis enthusiasts, sharing love for the game.
Yeah, and the live broadcasts, I've really enjoyed doing those. Actually, this is the first time really I've done any live broadcasting. In fact, it is the first time that I've done live broadcasting. But to get people participating, like getting Tom on there to participate, getting Mike in to participate as well, has been really good, and Doug as well that joined us, giving up their own time. Darren as well. Those are being our 4 special guests that joined us, talking through their involvement in Artemis. They're quite well-known names in the Artemis community because they're kind of like the leaders of the whole community, I'd say.
Absolutely, and they were genuinely really interesting interviews, and it's really nice to get to know the creative minds behind a lot of the content that we enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. So just a couple of notes from the race controls coming through. They're doing some practice laps at the minute. This course in the Poseidon Rift, you can see the difficulty in the Poseidon Rift with the black holes moving around. There's also gravitational waves in this area, which causes the ships themselves to drift in random directions. So as the Intrepid, for example, is moving in a straight line, actually they'll be pushed to one side depending on where those gravitational waves are pushing them. This race course is going to be a 4-lap course for the teams to complete in this quite hazardous environment that's constantly changing.
Yeah, it's a real interesting course because, as you say, there's the very visible dangers, which is obviously you've still got asteroids on there, you've still got nebulas which are going to slow you down, you've obviously got the big threat, which is the anomalies. These are all very visible and very potent dangers. However, then got the unseen threat of those gravitational waves, which are constantly pushing you off course, which from a helmsman perspective means you've got to be totally on the ball all the time. Every turn you make is going to be crucial and a lot more difficult. You've also got moving targets that you need to avoid, but furthermore, this means from the engineer's perspective, they have to keep extra power into the maneuvering to give the helm the extra wiggle room they need. Oh, careful, Normandy. Normandy on their test lap, plowing straight through a black hole. I think that's a lesson they'll learn. I should hope we don't see them do that again.
And just watching the live chat here, Wolf Pup saying, "Can we be friends as well?" Wolf Pup, nope. I'm going to go with a blanket rule of nope. So thank you for asking, though. I do appreciate the request. As Kristen said earlier, I will be your commanding officer, but your friend, no, thank you.
Hey Xavier, can we be friends?
Kristen, no. You've asked this before, and the answer's not changed.
Well, I mean, that was different. I was stood outside your window. It was 5 a.m. Of course, you're going to say no then.
Yeah.
But you know, I leave you letters. I leave you like milk trays. Nothing. No response. You don't call. You don't write.
Yeah. Next time that I aim at you, I will aim to hit you. I deliberately miss.
My misreading the course or is rapid going S1P long ways. Have the S gate on their starboard side and the P on their port side.
Yes, you are right there. I wonder if
I
that's
think that's a mislabeling of boys, because they are headed in the right direction, and they
problem
are
with
going through the gate.
Yeah.
I
I'm
thought
just...
it was just a way to start them off heading one direction, then make them wheel around to hit the 2 starboard gate.
That would be cool, but I think it's safe to assume I've seen this track run before. It was yesterday, and they were definitely facing towards the east of the map when they started.
Yeah. Wolf Pup, the bromance is shut down, and Xavier is just a grumpy old man. Wolf Pup, that is correct. Thank you. Like a nice grumpy old man. Thank you very much.
Now get off my lawn.
Yeah, definitely.
This is the first event that I've not had a copy of the broadcast up. I keep missing all these chat messages. Bad. Hang on a second. Sort that out.
I don't like the fact that it's labelled as a nice grumpy old man. No, that can't do.
Being too kind, that's your problem. You let your reputation slide. Okay. And Armada race 4. Okay, so it looks like they're getting stabilized energy for this race, which means there's definitely not going to be any refueling at the pits because it simply won't be necessary. I think Xavier died.
No, I was just communicating with the race controller saying that 1S and that 1P is causing a little bit of confusion for, I would say the spectators, but I think it's more the commentators that it's causing confusion for.
How many laps is this one?
I'm not sure. Did we post earlier how many laps?
Oh, you definitely said it earlier.
Will be 4 laps starting on the hour.
Oh, here we go.
Intrepid and Normandy are at the gate.
3, 2, 1, go.
The race controller there ignoring my pleas to correct the gates, but never mind.
I think he's just as tired as the rest of us. But there we go, seeing once again a little bit of a false start from the Normandy, really slow to come off the line, and again not as tight on that turn as we'd like to see. Intrepid with a good consistent speed. I think they've really keyed into the fact here that they are on consistent 1000 energy that's not going to be depleting, so they can really afford to hammer it and not worry about energy. Now they've just got to worry about coolant.
Taking a long line through that nebula though. If Normandy can get around there tight, oh no, they're going to go into the nebula as well, slows them right down. Intrepid, I imagine Intrepid might take a line outside of the nebula just to the south of it for turn 6. Yes, they are, there we go, so that they can keep that speed up. Hopefully they don't trigger a sector transition. That will be particularly interesting if they do.
But Normandy making a really smart play there, which I enjoyed seeing, which was they saw that they dipped into the nebula coming around on that turn on the 4th buoy, and instead of committing to that mistake, they wobbled a little bit, but then they pulled out of the nebula and took an ever so slightly wider line around that 5th buoy. Unfortunately, they didn't get enough speed up. Like Intrepid's making these really smart turns where they're building up enough speed to just punch through these fairly thin bands of nebula. So where Normandy is hitting it and slowing right down, Intrepid are managing to keep at some semblance of speed, which is giving them this edge and giving them the ability to push forward.
Normandy threading a really good line between those nebulas there. That just means that they can keep that speed on. I think the Intrepid, when they were going for that turn 8, actually ended up going through the nebula a bit, but Normandy losing all that advantage by hitting the edge of that nebula just in grid Charlie 1 and going for turn number 9. Intrepid on their second lap already, going past turn number 3. I think what's losing it here for Normandy is the amount of time that they're spending inside nebulas. If you can limit your time in nebulas, then you are going to be able to get the most speed. Intrepid, really nice tight turnaround point number 4. They can whip around point number 5 and completely miss that nebula, so that they're going to have maximum amount of speed. Look at that line. You can
Absolutely.
really see the experience there from the helm officer and their coordination between that team.
Absolutely, and again, they didn't take quite as wide a line this time as they did the first time, where we thought they were genuinely going to fly right out of the sector. But again, look at that, building up all that nice speed, and they just pushed through that nebula like it wasn't even there. The Normandy appears to be taking the widest line I have ever seen for that fourth buoy, to the point where I thought they were lost. But they seem to have recovered now.
Let's see if the Intrepid can thread through those 2 nebulas this time instead of hitting the northernmost nebula, and it's just getting bogged down a little bit there.
This is a great opportunity for the Normandy to really try and get some extra speed up, but they appear to have come to a stop.
I wonder if that's something to do with their energy management, whether
It shouldn't be there on a held 1000, so...
Getting straight past that black hole there, playing it risky, I think. Intrepid coming on to their 3rd lap now, I think.
Really, Normandy will have to pull something really impressive out of the bag if they want to claw this back.
Yeah, to be honest, Kristen, I think the only way that they're going to be able to get this back if the Intrepid really runs into some kind of problem, maybe their energy running out or something like that. But
again, their energy will not run out.
Yeah. Oh, well, of course, because it's set to 1,000. Thank you for reminding me.
I mean, it only took us 3 goes, but it's sticking.
Just generally ignoring you practicing that skill. You see.
Well, be the first, and you certainly won't be the last. But I will not be ignored. But yeah, stranger things have happened. We have seen people with colossal leads, seen them just absolutely decimated through 1 or 2 silly mistakes. Penalties really are the be-all and end-all of these races. A single penalty can completely change the outcome of a race. However, the best course of action for the Intrepid now is they've got that safe lead. They could go down to warp 1 right now and take everything smooth and careful, and they probably come out all right. They just need to be super careful, make sure they don't incur any penalties, and they should see their way past the line with only 2 buoys to go.
Yeah, I think when you are racing like this, if you are in 2nd place or you're in 3rd place and you're trying to catch the leader up, it puts a lot of pressure on you, and I think that's where the mistakes start creeping in. As soon as you start making mistakes, then you're going to fall even further and further behind. It ramps up the pressure. So it's when you're tailing like this, it's whether your team can handle that pressure and get every single turn precise to be able to catch up and make up the distance that you've lost behind somebody. But obviously with that extra pressure on, if you are going to be then forced into making more and more mistakes, the leader's going to have it really nice and easy.
Absolutely. Now, what I will say, what I am impressed by, that the fact that we've seen from both of these teams, we've obviously made comments about, I don't think that line's quite right, that line could have been better, but I'd argue no more than we have throughout the rest of the races. And in this race in particular, they are pushing hard against gravitational forces, which again is the unseen enemy of this race. So that considered, I think both teams have done exceptionally well maintaining the lines that they have.
Oh, most definitely, yeah. These are very, very high quality races as well. I mean, again, we've not seen any penalties yet. We've seen mistakes where it's been too wide or something like that, but actually, in general, all those turns have been really nice and tight. The Normandy's taking a really good line around turn 8 there to keep outside the nebula. If they can just nip the edge there, they're going to have a good run onto turn 9 and then round through the final gate onto their next lap.
think is this possibly the final lap for the Normandy?
I think
Sorry,
for
the Intrepid,
I
rather?
think for the Intrepid, we're on to the final lap. The Normandy just moving on to their final lap now.
Just very barely avoiding that black hole there as well. So some nice quick response from helm and engineer.
It would be interesting to know how the helm officers are handling the gravitational waves in here, pushing them to one side. Whether they're taking that into account or whether they're just trying to completely ignore it. If it's causing them any extra issues when they're navigating through, particularly going through like the asteroid fields.
Without a doubt, it's going to be causing all kinds of havoc. Like, I didn't have the pleasure of running this track, and to be honest, thinking about it, I'm quite glad I didn't, because especially bear in mind again that these are two-man crews. These races are designed for full three-man crews. So again, especially with a map like this where there's a lot of danger and some of it moves, not having your science officer there is really going to be. It's an attention splitter. It's a problem.
And we've seen in the past how three-man crews have really managed to dominate some of these races as well. Having that extra person saying, right, your next heading is this, your next heading is this, I think can really make a difference.
And of course, Intrepid across the line there, now heading back into the pits. A solid win for the Intrepid. However, Normandy putting up a really good fight to the end.
Inquiry after the race over allegations of weapons use at the start of this race.
What? Oh,
Well,
damn.
that is the first report of that we've had. Could the Intrepid be disqualified if they were the ones who were using the weapons and tried to knock out the Normandy's warp systems?
Oh, that'd be a giggle, wouldn't it?
Ooh, that would be very controversial. I mean, it was a very big lead by the Intrepid, but if they were disqualified for weapons fire, or was it the Normandy trying to get an advantage, trying to get the Intrepid tripped up off the start line and it backfiring and then...
I mean, if I'm honest, I can't see a reason why, like, consistently the Intrepid has pulled away first every single time. Every single race we've had in this fourth bracket, they have pulled off the line first. I suspect the only people who would have had an opportunity to get some shots off would have been the Normandy. Oh, he's going to speak to the race coordinator, hasn't he? Yeah, he has. Well, in which case, whilst we wait for him to come back after that inquiry, one final word from our sponsors, Alvonian Tech Support. If your computer was human, you'd have probably killed it by now. So, were you off to speak to the race controller?
I think we'll give the race controller a couple of minutes. He's just going through with the different teams, I think, trying to ascertain exactly what happened with that weapons fire. It'll be interesting to see what he decides to do with that, either force them to complete one more lap, maybe starting at the same position, or giving a penalty to one, maybe disqualifying one of the ships, and if they are disqualified, then it could change the race winner.
It could do. If I'm being perfectly... Oh, hello.
Here we go, the race controller. So we heard a report of some weapons fire during that race.
Yes, at the start of the race, the Intrepid appear to have the Normandy locked up. I've spoken with both the Normandy crew and the Intrepid crew, and it appeared to, whilst the Intrepid was rather thinking about it, they didn't actually fire on the Normandy, which is lucky really, because I was going to penalise them half a lap, which would have completely changed the result of the race.
I believe use of weapons is an immediate disqualification.
Mm-hmm.
Which, well, I mean, that definitely would have... either way, it's a significant shift in the balance of that last race.
Indeed.
Yeah. Thank you for being race controller for this fourth bracket. I know it's, well, and the only one with controversy in it.
Yeah, and I think as well, Fish, you were kind of thrown in at the deep end with this one, weren't you? Our usual race controller, Raiden, unable to make it, and me being assigned to the commentators, you had to step in last minute, so we really appreciate that, so that we could still hold this race.
Not at all, and happy to deputise for Raiden.
Some really good races there. We managed to get 3 in. Very, very enjoyable to watch. I hope people watching on the live stream enjoyed watching the last race of this Armada.
User left your channel.
If you want us to hold race events in the future, you should let us know, because I think proper brackets with properly registered teams and a proper tournament could be a really cool thing to do. That would be a nice thing to put up on this channel.
Yeah, you know, I think after seeing how these races pan out, and these were all the standard races that we've got here as well. There's some advanced races that we had planned in, and those advanced races requiring 3 crews, because without your 3rd crewman, the navigation element in there would really trip you up. Instead of having the waypoints labelled as they are with the port and starboard turns, the advanced races actually gave you a race card with locations and the side that you had to pass up the turn on, adding that extra navigational challenge to the race itself. So to get some experienced race teams together to give them the opportunity to go for more advanced races like that would be, I think, a fantastic sight to see.
Although that does make me chuckle, our track with multiple black holes drifting their way across the map. Not even our advanced track, mate. That's a baby track. That's a basic track. One more note, though. I'm genuinely surprised we haven't had more attempts at foul play. Everybody's been exceedingly polite about not shooting each other with fully armed ships. So yeah, it was nice to have a little controversy at the end there. But very well done to all the racers, not just for these final races in this final bracket. Well done to them, fantastic showing. But for all of our races throughout the entire weekend, we hope you enjoyed it. We certainly did. It was a great spectacle.
Yeah, and thank you for coming along and allowing these races to happen. I mean, if we hadn't had people turning up and we only had 1 or 2 people, we wouldn't have been able to hold them. So we've consistently got 4 people, 6 people. I think the most that we got at one point was 8 people organising into teams to be able to hold these races. So without the actual race teams participating, without people being here to take part, they just wouldn't have happened, and we'd have had to scrap them and come up with some other thing on the spot, which would have been an interesting experience, I think.
Was it Raiden who really pushed for the racing idea?
Raiden was one of the driving forces behind these races. Yeah, all the courses that we've been around are the courses that he designed, that he checked, all the energy modifications to the ship he went through and he tested them. So yeah, this is very much Raiden's thing that he put together. I pitched the idea originally to Raiden to say, look, we want to hold these races. He said he'd done some races outside of Artemis before, some different race events, so I handed the reins over to him and let him run with it. We conversed back and forwards of what would make the best format for the race, and we fixed on this one and tried this one out. He really went away, thought about the courses carefully, those tight turns like the chicane turns that we had in one race, where the pit stops were going to be, what kind of energy boost, and obviously he was the one to kick off the races and run them first. So yeah, hands down to Raiden for pulling all this together and having it all ready for this event.
Yeah. Good job, Raiden. Thank you very much. But I think that's probably all the time we've got for this. As well, you're late. You should be helping GM a mission right now.
Yeah, so we've got a few people up there. I'm going to bring down the stream there. Thank you for watching again, and I'm not sure if I'm going to broadcast this next GM mission. The next broadcast you might see will be the wrapping up at the end of this Armada event. So just a few thank yous to say before we end the weekend. So stay tuned, and we'll be back later.
Peace out.
User left your channel.